Your voice sounds cooler than mine in the mic. Like in my
Really?
head. Yeah, you have a better voice. It's not fair. All right, you ready?
I had nothing to do with that.
Cool. All right, we good to go?
We're good to go.
All right, what's up? This is Dustin McCullough, and I'm here with Conrad Craft, and this is episode 1, season 1 of a podcast where musicians talk about stuff and entertainment stuff and music stuff and movies and books and anything else that we happen to find interesting. Like, even if it's hobbies, I don't care. We're just here to have fun, so... if you're listening, then enjoy. If you're watching, then also enjoy. So, okay. So I'll say this. Like, so me as a musician, I've I'm a voice teacher. That's what I do. And voice people are obviously the laziest of all musicians, right? That is
Okay.
like.
All right, expand on that idea. I like this. Keep going.
Well, because here's the thing, right? So, like, a lot of times with voice, people who are talented vocally, they're a lot of times they're born with it. They got it, they're going to train, they build it up, obviously I make my living doing the training part of it. So, like, clearly some of them work some kind of hard, right?
Right.
But even then it's like the development of it, right, doesn't have to be as intricate as when you're learning something like piano. So, like, when I was learning piano, right, I had to, like, hardcore dive into practice, and my mom, like, forced me to do it even on the days when I didn't want to, which is a great thing to do for your kids. But like
nobody's fingers automatically know where to play a C chord.
Yeah, unless you're like a
experience
prodigy,
it.
you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, even that is like you could be shown the thing, you could watch someone do it, and then be a prodigy and understand it. But you're not going to walk up to it and instantly know what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't like the technical whole thing.
If somebody
Learning
doesn't tell
curve.
you that's a C, then you're not going to know that's a C.
Yeah.
But anyway, so voice people are just, they just are the laziest of them all. And like, you go to my website has one blog post, because it was like, your website should have a blog, and I was like, okay, I'll make a blog, and so I put one blog post up. And it was actually about this topic where musicians, you go to, like, a university, you go to the practice rooms, right? What's the practice rooms filled with? Like, all the people who are in there, it's like your trumpet players, your piano players, your violinists, your cellists, your all these other.
They're all crafting hardcore. With their
and it's
skill.
like, where are all the singers? I was like, oh, they're at that party.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just a funny thing.
Yeah.
I forgot like completely why I brought that up. I just know that it's kind of a funny thing that is kind of true in the music world. So.
It is funny. Whenever I was in college and I was a part of a chamber choir, we had this one member who he was slightly autistic. But as an effect of that, he had perfect pitch. It was one of those extra little bonus superpowers that sometimes you get. And so he was an amazing asset to our chamber choir, specifically to the men, because I think that because often men get put in like tenor role, baritone, bass role in a chamber choir. They're not the lead voices. So they're super lazy. They're like the laziest of the laziest. When you're singing something from, like, if you're doing a vocalization of a Mozart piece, right? And you're in the bass section, you're sitting here going da ba da ba da da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da. It's like you're not really, your range is like that for the notes you hit.
Yeah,
While
exactly.
The Sopranos are
it's
like
a little
that.
boring, right?
So you're super, super lazy as a dude. And it was even easier for us because we had him, and we could just be like, hey, what's that note? And because he had perfect pitch, he had memorized the pitches, and he could sing any pitch perfectly. So yeah, it's incredible.
I don't know why. I think that, you were talking about, you're interested in things that people find boring. So, and that's why I brought up the vocalist stuff, right? Because for me, as I've over time just gotten more interested in music stuff, like, I've really enjoyed, like, kind of found myself in a place where I really do enjoy the theory stuff more, just as as something that I actually find entertaining, just kind of fun to do, you know. And I think that just kind of happens with like almost like just kind of like the time of where you are in life sometimes, maybe your personalities, things like that. But I think that people in general, like I think YouTube has been probably the best thing for worst thing and best thing for music theory, in the sense that like worst thing in the sense that you get some people who will say things that they're really not sure of, right? And I will admit that there's probably been a time where I've probably been that person too, right?
Volume does not mean quality.
But at the same time, it's also given access to people who really do know what they talk about, and not just that they know what they're talking about, but they can do it in such a fun way, right? So the YouTube channel, my students probably are going to be sick of me saying this guy's name. I just
Rick?
really
Is it Rick Beato?
No, but I do watch his channel, and I do enjoy it too, and find it. You know, it's funny, when I first found his channel, I was like, oh, he seems kind of closed-minded, like, as far as music stuff. But then as I really started watching his channel, I was like, no, actually, he's really open-minded. Like, he's actually got a pretty cool perspective on how he views music and stuff. No, but the guy I was going to say is Andrew Huang.
Okay.
Do you know who that is? So his channel, like, the way he does stuff, he does, like, Theory Thursday. And, like, I don't know, it's just like, I'm like, he'll take something that is just like fringe and boring, and I'll be like sucked in, like super fascinated by it. And I think it's kind of funny because like on the music entertainment world, there's like a new like channel that is actually entertainment, but it's education,
right?
And it's more enjoyable to be a part of than some of the traditional things, like, you know, that kind of the music world had to offer. You know what I'm saying? So
it's entertainment, but not in the normal way that you would expect entertainment to be.
So I don't know. I've been really interested in that, and it's been fun to grow musically in that way.
And with this podcast, you're kind of like diving off into that kind of realm in a lot of ways yourself, you know, and that's really cool. I'm really honored to actually
be your first guest.
Yeah, I mean, sorry for you guys,
right?
You know? But this is fun for me,
right? No, I mean, well, and actually, so kind of the reason that I was like, you know, Conrad would be great to be with the show is, one, I know that you're a talented musician. I know that you've done,
thanks, man.
You've done lots of things musically. But also you do YouTube stuff. I know that you're just kind of like savvy with connecting with people and all that kind of stuff. So actually, veering off on that, like, so I want to kind of talk about that actually for a second. Is that your YouTube channel is about, like, you've got two YouTube channels, and you got the one that's like, I want to talk about the one that is like YouTube, the craft side of like where you're building stuff and all that kind of stuff,
right?
Which is not the music related one, but I actually I find very fascinating. Like you're like,
sure, okay.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So all right, I guess some background on me is I grew up in a house where my dad was a home remodeler, a carpenter, cabinet maker, and so from a young age I was into that. It was something that, you know, when you're a kid and you're invited into, in a lot of ways, the profession of your dad, that's really an empowering thing. And so learning all the skills, learning the tools, and then building your own interests out of that's just something that happened naturally to me.
Yeah. And
what I kind of discovered from a very early age is that I enjoy collecting hobbies, and I enjoy collecting skills, and skills are just really satisfying to me to obtain. I find that I see something that's difficult and it makes it more valuable because it's difficult. I remember actually being 12 or 13 years old and actually having a conversation with my dad about why I would want to learn. I was learning guitar, why I would want to learn a certain kind of music. My dad was into bluegrass, and that was interesting, but none of my friends were listening to it. But the more I listened to it, the more I realized how much more difficult it seemed to play bluegrass flat pick guitar than to slam a power chord on an electric guitar. Or, I mean, obviously you have shredding and things like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, whenever it comes to the the melody of what's
Sure.
going on. Like this, my understanding was starting to grow, and I was understanding that melody is like, okay, this is what the whole song really revolves around. The chords support the melody, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, the melodic stuff going on in this traditional music is insane.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it's probably why it's not as popular. It's because it's really complex in a lot of ways, even though it may
like how
sound...
they say that jazz is the musician's music. Like it's not something that people who don't really appreciate the finer details of music aren't always going to appreciate jazz, because
very cerebral.
Yeah, because there's things that, but if you do know about a little bit about music, and you do know some appreciation for the theory and what's happening, you can pick up on the things, and you're like, oh, I see what they did there. That was pretty boss.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot culturally that's associated with different types of music. You can think about, like country music or bluegrass music or whatever music is. You can associate actually any kind of music with what you might categorize in your mind as being like, this is hick music, or this is that.
Yeah, or like something like from the East, So like I have a new student recently who started taking, and I'm actually teaching him to sing. So I'm teaching him the vocal techniques, but actually the music he's singing is in Arabic, and I don't know Arabic. Like I know, kind of.
So like, phrasing the words and things like that is maybe different.
Yeah. It's definitely a trip, because he's kind of teaching me some stuff while I'm teaching him, and so I learned like 2 scales the other day and I thought it was really fascinating. So he taught me the scale. It's called Hajaz, which is 4 notes. And you start on your starting note, which he called a half or a whole, regardless. I was like, that's interesting. And then you go up a half step, and then a whole step and a half, and then another half step after that, I think. And so it's only 4 notes. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he said, so what you do is, he's like, you do that chord, or you do that scale, and then you add one of the other types of scales that we have available to it, and that will make the octave. So he taught me another scale called the Kurt, and these are based off of where they're called those based off of the location that they were kind of formed in. Right. So like for us,
like the modes or whatever.
Yeah. No. Like the city, like or the territory, the province. Right. So like we would have, like, what do we call, a C major scale,
like Ionian or whatever.
Yeah, we'll call it that based off of not because of some city named major, or you know what I'm saying, but for them it's Hajaz and Kurt, because that's where these scales were made up. Right. And anyway, so he taught me those 2, and I was really having a lot of fun with that. And so like what you're saying, like as far as like the distinct sound and everything kind of having its own skill, right? For us, what might sound like that wouldn't necessarily sound like skill. Like if I just played that scale for somebody in the States, they'd be like, okay. I mean, they would probably, stereotypically they'd say, oh, it sounds like that sounds like from Aladdin, right? And and you're like, okay,
yeah, you got some cool harmonic minor things going on or whatever, and you're like, what?
Yeah. So, all right. So, tell me more. So, like your YouTube channel, you're doing things like you're doing wood turning of chess pieces, which has really like you've done really well as far as people finding that very interesting. I'm not gonna lie, I turned on that video one time and I watched the whole thing, and I was like, why did I watch this?
Yeah. Like, it's for the same reason that people get into the hobby. It's simply kind of hypnotizing.
It is.
You have spinning things, you have wood chips flying off. It's a little bit hypnotizing.
It seems so satisfying.
It's extremely satisfying.
Yeah, like just being able to like I feel like I would screw that up. Like,
well, dude, I mean, that was my experience, like, for a good period of time in learning, obviously, anything like that. But yeah, I what happened was I was making videos. That's funny. Okay, so I need to backtrack slightly, because I went from woodworking. My dad started teaching me guitar. I got interested in bluegrass. I picked up mandolin and started teaching myself mandolin. Got really interested in that. Started competing, trying to learn more and more, competition songs and complex stuff. And then I, had to work. I was like, I had to make a living. I started teaching music, and then college came along, and before college, I was very interested in sciences. I have a lot of these different interests all the time.
Sure.
As a kid, I was into beekeeping. Didn't know that was actually going to end up being a profession I would take on later.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, I know that's a whole nother subject, but I find it like we've talked about that a few times just personally. And like, I find that to be super cool, a very fascinating aspect about you as a person. I'm like, dude knows how to like keep bees. I mean, like, like you just don't like walk down the street and like people are like, yeah, I know how to like take care of bees, so
it has its good days and its bad days, obviously.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is your question, I'm specifically leading into that because actually all these interests seem to have tied together some way, and it's a little bit unknown to me exactly how that all played out that way. But I after college, I had my own little music studio, and I had been associated with a beekeeping association at one point in time, and somebody contacted the association looking for a very proficient beekeeper for a bee company they were going to run here locally. And I was contacted and basically given the opportunity to run a 100-acre bee farm with 350 beehives on it. And that was a really great experience. And the point is that I made videos of what I did. And specifically, I made a video for whenever we had our extraction line set up. Okay. And this is like, 2000. This is 2012. Extraction is removing honey.
Yeah,
from
that's
the
where
combs.
you're like actually doing the fun part.
That's the payday. And so we had bought like $60,000 in extraction machinery and equipment to centrifugally throw honey out of these honeycombs.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet stuff. And I had 1,000-gallon tank to store honey in, and I had like it's like playing mousetrap as a kid, where you get to set up all this stuff and then see how all the interactions happen.
Nice.
It was amazing. So I made a video of that, and it featured a piece of equipment called the Cowan 60 frame extractor. And this is super niche, right? Like nobody gets on YouTube and goes, I'm going to look up a Cowan 60 frame extractor. Or at least that's what I thought.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, so I post this thing online because I'm like, this is a business. I'm trying to learn about business. I'm trying to run this business well for my boss. I'm trying to just, 2011, I started like in 2010, 2011, horrible droughts. Like the worst drought in Texas history hit. Like all of the really bad things agriculturally started happening.
Yeah.
That was actually helpful in a way for, I think, specifically that video because, people were losing half of their hives. We lost almost half of our beehives during the drought. And it's interesting how sometimes you get these things that you do and you don't really do them to become famous. You do them simply because you think this is responsible or it's a good idea. Right.
Or in the case of what we're doing here, because I want to hang out with friends and have fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so because that video, after I put it up, like a couple of months later, I started getting like tons and tons of action. I'm like, what did I do? All I had done was what an ignorant person should do anytime you're trying to learn something specifically like about social media, and that is use every single asset that is provided to you.
Sure.
If you want to, become better at YouTube videos or be seen more, simply study what you're doing, and then fill up that description, fill up all those points, and do a really good job of thinking about what you should add to that. So anyway, I was getting apparently so many hits on it by other professional beekeepers and people interested in beekeeping, hobbyist beekeepers, that Cowan Manufacturing started selling a lot more of their machinery. Yeah, this is not cheap machinery either,
dude.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like I had
write them a letter. Well, hey guys, I'm not saying it's all because of me, but it
was really funny because I ended up talking to somebody at one point in time.
Oh wow.
Sometime after that, they never contacted me. Apparently someone contacted me and was like, hey, I was talking to the guys at Cowan. They were actually ordering, and they're like, yeah man, this video with this guy in Texas, like after that thing went up, we started selling stuff. You know, I was like, we ought to get a hold of that guy sometime. And I'm
That's
like,
cool.
well, I'm here.
Yeah.
But
That's
no.
awesome.
So that just piqued my interest in the possibility.
Sure.
And then one day I made like a video of me turning a little chess piece out of styrofoam, basically green styrofoam on a lathe. And then that started doing well. But it's like I have been the laziest YouTuber in the world.
I'm the worst.
And what I realize is that it's all about your expectations.
Yes, exactly.
You know, my expectations were super low. I just wanted to do something interesting and fun and show how it could be done well.
Right.
And
for me, like my original purpose of a YouTube channel was I put my, I'm doing a business, I'm, doing music stuff, and I was like, it'd be good like for people to be able to like see me and, I have many clients who've like gone and checked out my YouTube channel first, and there's nothing on there that's like particularly well produced or really well done. I did a couple like vlog things with me and the kids and Kelly, my wife, and people, it's like they just see it and it just makes me relatable, I guess, so I was like, okay, and I don't upload very frequently because I don't feel like I have anything consistent to do. So maybe this will be the consistent thing that I do. But I don't know. I've not really been too concerned about it. I want it there, but I've not really been like too worried about like really pushing it.
Right.
And then lately I was like, I think I will actually try to like actually do something and just
heck yeah, go
have
for
fun
it.
too, and all that kind of stuff.
Expectations,
and it's
man.
funny what you were saying, like you were like, you put something up that you didn't think anybody would find interest in. It's funny, the things that I have found myself YouTubing like that are so specific, I mean like unbelievable, like so random, and you think like, no, I've got to be the only person who's ever asked this question, and sure enough there's a YouTube video of some guy explaining how to do it, and I'm like, my gosh, man, it's just so funny how like it seems like no matter how specific, it also kind of makes creating stuff a little bit difficult in the sense that you want to do something special or unique or different, and it's like, well, every idea has already been done, which is why you just you get discouraged and you quit, kind of that kind of stuff. Real quick, I actually want to talk about kind of going back to the music side of things. So you said earlier, you said that like you found interest in the difficulty, right? So you found like enjoyable,
almost competitive kind of feeling from the difficulty of a piece. Like, so it challenged me.
Tell me if you've noticed this. Like, there's a strange, maybe it's not strange because it's happens normal, like it's all over the world, but like to me it's strange. There's a sense in the music world where people like who are musical, it's like if it's not difficult, it's like it's almost like they can't enjoy it, they can't appreciate it. And then there's other people who are kind of the opposite, where it's like it has to be a certain kind of commercial, it has to be a certain kind of like simplicity, otherwise they won't enjoy it,
right?
And to me, I've always found it strange. I've always enjoyed lots of variety of music. I've always found that I could, when I was younger, I would be like, oh, rock is where it's at, but also at the same time excuse me, at the same time, I would, but I was also like listening to, Nelly and a lot of top 40 rappers and pop artists and things like that. Like, I just didn't like, I presented myself as Mr. Rocker, but I actually always kind of enjoyed, and there was like a social pressure, but I feel like that social pressure is gone. Like, high school students nowadays, like back when I was a kid, it's like you were a rocker or you were or not, you were a prep or whatever. And like, kids nowadays, when it comes to the music side, I don't feel like they have that kind of pressure, but there is still a I know I'm getting all over the place, but like, for me
you have a good point.
For
I
me,
want to riff off a little bit after you. Yeah.
For me, when I listen to music, like, I can just almost always find something to enjoy about it. Like, I don't ever, I will say this, I don't ever like seek out country music, which, and I'm from Texas, so you'd think that that I'd be a little bit more, country minded or whatever. I enjoy lots of country songs when I hear them, but I never like find myself, and when it's on, I don't complain. But I never find myself seeking it out. But still, to me, there's just this sense of I kind of have this mindset when it comes to music, and movies, and all kinds of forms of entertainment. Like, I just kind of choose not to close myself off from something that can add something to my life. Like, if I feel like, well, I'm not going to love all things equally, but like if that's not like a bad thing, if it's not like an actual negative in my life, like, I don't really see a reason why I would say like, oh, I'll never listen to that. Like, I love me some Josh Groban when I'm in the mood for it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
And I don't know. I just feel like there's this strange thing in the world where you have some musicians who are like, that's terrible music. That's so simple. And I'm like, yeah, but like, isn't that just kind of what makes it so enjoyable? Like
people like.
But then and then other people are like some with jazz are like, oh, I can't even tell what's going on with all that, and I'm like, yeah, but
was that a mistake? No, it was jazz.
Yeah, and I'm like, but doesn't that make it like interesting? Like, doesn't like it's like it keeps you on your toes. One is like you can just kind of sit back and just vibe and chill and be like, I know what's coming up, but that's totally fine. And then the other one, it's kind of like, oh man, like it's like constantly engaging you.
Yes,
I feel like people have a struggle with that, and I don't understand it. So
yeah, I mean, I love seeing things and then like kind of picking them apart mentally. I'm one of these guys that likes to take things apart, and put them back together, like for the why. The why really matters to me. And I think what you're describing, at least it rings this way for me. I think what you're describing is like the values that are endemic, if you will, in like people's personalities. So it's like you have obviously a little bit more openness to new experience, right, as a value, right?
Yeah.
So like you're willing to try things, you're willing to talk to people, so you're very open to that kind of stuff. And there's another value. Okay, so openness to experience is like one pretty core value. Another one is like in-group loyalty, right? And so you have like those two things fighting against each other, I think, in what you're describing.
That's a good point. Like brand loyalty. Like, I will say when I was younger, I had a lot more brand loyalty. Like I would be like, oh, Chevy was, Chevy's the only truck for me, even though I never owned a Chevy. Like, I literally, first truck I ever owned was a Ford. That's the only truck I've ever owned is a Ford. And I've never been super displeased or whatever with my Ford trucks. No. But at the same time, I'm not like a Ford fanatic either.
Exactly.
But when I was younger, though, I did have that, like, kind of what you're saying, like just that sense of that, like, loyalty to, and now that I'm older, I'm like, just... Well, also when you're an adult, you're just
a little more mature,
and you're also kind of like, I just want something that will work. I just want to be able to not break down on the road. I mean,
it's things, values start to supersede each other a little bit on that end for sure. I feel like, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Because I'm like you. I could listen to a lot of different kinds of music and enjoy them. I was in a jazz combo in college, but I was a mandolin player. It's like they let me into basically a brass band with a mandolin, and it was because the director of it was just open-minded enough to. And
that's pretty cool.
It was great. I mean, like learning jazz chops on the mandolin and learning how to play the changes and doing all that kind of stuff. That was I couldn't have got that at a lot of places, or at least it seems to me like that shouldn't be allowed. You would think the cliche thing would be to be like, no, kid, pick up a horn or something like that. But no, I was playing Charlie Parker on the mandolin and I loved it. And that I think that comes from an openness and willingness of the teacher, obviously, an openness and willingness for me, but my ability to enjoy different kinds of music has, I think, a lot to do with also my ability to put myself into a mindset of enjoying it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, in general, they just kind of, that's a really difficult exercise. The music should come to them. They shouldn't have to go to the music. If you
that's actually a really good perspective, because that's a good point, because I do that like naturally on my own, and I just don't think that's I don't consciously think that's what I'm doing. I am kind of going to the music. So like there's a song that my sister showed me, which is something I'd heard, but I'd never really been familiar with. What was actually called the Queen of the Night aria.
Oh yeah.
You know, where she's like the high pitch soprano lady doing the awesome stops in that high part of her voice. And it's like, you know, sure, I'd always kind of, you know, you're that's a song you're familiar with, but you don't like know it. And then like I heard it from the perspective of being a music person, you know, and I was like, okay, so like, yeah, like I could really like sit down and actually sit and listen to it and enjoy it. But I will say, like, I still won't, like, I'm not gonna go pay.
Turn that on.
I'm not gonna go pay for an opera ticket, you know.
Right.
But like, I'll watch it on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, you know, that there is that kind of aspect of like I am kind of going to the music in that sense. So, which I think is good. And I know like a lot of stuff is also like culturally what you're brought up with. Like some people, you know, are kind of brought up by parents who say like, oh, this is the music and this is the only music. And, you know, so I know that affects people too.
That's an in-group loyalty thing. You
yeah,
know?
Exactly. Like, and so, but I think like just in general, as you get older as a person, just kind of that willingness to be like, you know, like see what this brings to the table. So as a voice teacher, I always tell my students, I say like what I teach is different from what people teach in choir, right? I don't teach the same kind of thing that a choir teacher is doing, you know?
Yeah.
And
why would you? You're trying to different results.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I tell them. I say what we're shooting for are completely different things. So don't think that your choir teacher is like terrible. You know, I said don't reject everything that they're teaching you, and don't reject. And so I always say
so
like,
funny because I'm hearing them in my head in college basically going, I can't believe these pop artists, did their vocal teachers not teach them how to sing? They don't. It's not two ways.
Yeah, I know. But I tell people, I'm like, you know, like give yourself as much room to grow as possible. So like take what is good from them and apply it to where you want it to be applied.
That's really good. Really good perspective.
And I do the same thing because what I kind of learned that perspective from studying Hebrew in college. So I studied Hebrew. I was a Hebrew minor, and I was learning all this stuff. And then I went to a master's program with a teacher who taught it from a very radically different perspective.
Really?
Yeah, and I was never great at it in college, so I kind of wanted to start fresh.
It's a tough subject.
Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, like these are totally different like ways of doing this. And I was like taking the good from both. And then I did it a third time with another professor who taught.
Did you fail 3 times? What is this?
No, I actually passed.
Just kidding, man.
No, I know. Well, I mean, you know, it's not that far out of the realm of possibility. No, I just never really. It's like I was passing, but I just really never felt like I was like totally comfortable and confident being able to be like, yeah, I know Hebrew, you know.
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to go to something totally. I'm going to change gears now. All right, we're going to. So this is really in the realm of entertainment. So all you people who are just wanting to really get into like, you know, People magazine stuff, I was like, you know, I want to talk about like popular stuff and popular music and things like that. So I was like, I wonder if we could do some like fun facts about things. And so I looked up some fun facts about Adele. And
Adele.
Yeah, you know. And I'm not going to lie, some of these I was truly like, whoa, hey, that is actually like super interesting.
Okay.
So I'm not going to go over all these. But there's this article on Insider Magazine. I guess they do this kind of thing regularly. So we'll just kind of go over some of the points that they have there. And everyone go check out Insider Magazine so they don't sue me. So
Insider Magazine, not a sponsor.
Yeah, exactly. They do not endorse anything happening on this show.
Yes.
So I'm not gonna lie though, Insider Magazine, some of the things you put on here are a little bit lame. Like she's a Taurus. I'm like, okay, I know somebody cares about that like super deeply, but it's just not me. Okay, so I found this actually very interesting. So she wrote her debut hit, "Hometown Glory," in 10 minutes. Yeah. So like the one that like, you know,
that's impressive.
I know. I was like, it was on her album 19. She wrote it when she was 18, and but she just wrote it in 10 minutes, and that ended up being, you know, that song, you know, hometown, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I've actually never heard that song. So I was like, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And then I was like, I don't think I know that song.
Where was it a hit? Was it a hit in
whenever
in Europe?
her
Was it a hit in England? Where was it in?
No, I mean it was a hit because it was
Like
on
a
her
global hit?
Yeah, her album 19 was just overall a big success, and so like that song. But I just thought it was funny. I was like, Hometown Glory, cool, that's amazing. And then I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know that song.
I don't know that song.
Even
Yeah,
a little bit. But it is cool that artists can do that, like have that creative burst. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I'm not gonna lie, when I sit down to write a song, for me it usually takes a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not a fast songwriter.
Me either.
I'm like a painfully slow songwriter. If I'm in a good co-write session, I can get something churned out faster. But for the most part, like, I'm kind of slow at it.
You're not an uncreative person, though. It's like,
right.
I feel like you have this ability to like create conversation, create, like you can definitely, let me put it this way, I think you definitely could write any song you wanted to in 10 minutes, because I have this belief that what our hangups usually are is
right.
It's entirely the expectations thing again. It's like we want to make an American classic, or we want to make a #1 hit.
That's true.
And we shouldn't.
We do get in our heads a lot.
Yeah. It's like
is this chord structure too simple? I do that. I'm not gonna lie. I will literally do a chord structure, and I'd be like, oh, that's so basic. Like everyone and their mom does that chord structure. And I'm like, I don't know why I care so much, because I listen to songs with super basic chord structures and I love them. So I don't know. I don't know why I can't do it, but
right. Yeah. So like just the willingness to be like, it's okay. I don't have
this
to
hole
try.
in the desk fits exactly my phone. Look at that. Sorry.
Nice.
No,
nice
totally.
Score.
Yeah. Totally pointless. Anyways.
Well, great for the podcast. So yeah, but man, I think that's like, as far as Adele goes, I think that really shows the power of Adele starting really early on in her career to put aside like the expectations of I have to do something incredible and just saying I have to produce. And to me, that's like, if you're going to do anything that's craftsmanship based, like the woodworking stuff, or you're going to do anything that is skill based, it's almost all entirely about production. It's not always about quality. It's not always about accessibility. It's simply about doing it and producing it.
Yeah, I tell my students that all the time. I mean, I preach at them big time on this. I'm like, dude, if you think that you're going to do this when you're good enough, you're never going to do it. Like, you have to start putting out the content now, and just, I was like, you will develop. You will just become what you need to become. Like everyone thinks that like these big pop artists, like they get discovered based off of like a simple like song, or they get the right meeting or something.
Right. It's like
they
got lucky.
And then they start to develop, and it's like, no, man, they were developed like they had released so much stuff that doesn't sound like who they are now, and they weren't worried about like, well, what if my brand changes? Right. They were like, because that, first of all, if you're going to be a part of a real like big label like that, dude, they can do, they're branding wizards, right? They'll know how to handle that. But like, it is true. It's like you just gotta go for it. You just gotta start putting stuff out there. I encourage my students to do that all the time. I have all of like 2 that actually do it.
Give us another good one.
So I actually found this one to be very fascinating, and it also kind of ages Adele a little bit. So she got her start on MySpace.
Yeah.
She started gaining traction. I thought Colby Calais was like the only one, right? No, but she did. She started getting some noticeable stuff in 2006, and I was like, I don't know. I just thought that was fascinating. I wasn't one of the people, doing that.
Yeah, me either.
So
I think it was a little like, well, you're younger than I am though, so maybe it was more my crowd than your crowd too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, but she's my age. I mean, she's like a year younger than me.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah. Which is also, I'm like, oh,
it's incredible.
I'm like, man, people do so much more with their lives than I've done with mine. But that's not true.
Well, to be honest,
say that
people do, but it's not her. It's
exactly.
Like her producers are making her move. People,
and
she's got a lot of people that really do well off of her too. So they all want her to do well.
Exactly. But I don't know. I just thought that was funny because it's like, that was like before social media was like the thing to do before like, that was like the only way that you could even, nowadays a label won't even look at you unless you've got like, you're basically already making a small amount of money from stuff like that. I guess that's not 100% true, but it's,
all the old guys say it's true.
Yeah,
all the old guys like Rick Beato and people like that talk about the difference between the producers now versus the producers then.
Yeah. So but it's just kind of one of those things where you're just labels are like, well, we can spend money and time developing you, or we can go to one of the 1 million artists who are already developed.
Yeah.
So but it's like the MySpace people, they were like pioneers, you know what I'm saying? They were like,
dude.
and it's like, I just didn't know Adele was one of those pioneers,
She
so
was, for
yeah,
sure. That's crazy.
so
I didn't know
MySpace was the Mayflower of social media music industry stuff. So somebody's gonna be offended by that.
Well, I just remember when that was like how you booked bands. You would be like, "What's your MySpace page?"
Right.
Or whatever. It's like, go look up my MySpace. It's
right.
like, okay.
Yep. Okay. So then, this is another super interesting Adele fact. Adele's album 21 is one of the best-selling albums of all time in both the UK and the United States.
Wow.
And specifically in the UK, I don't know. I think this is impressive. In the UK, the album is the fourth best-selling album of all time in the UK, which means she's like just below the Beatles.
That's nuts.
Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
You think like the Beatles are number 3 with one of their albums,
right?
And you're like, dude, in the UK, you're right there with the Beatles. Like, I mean, I've always liked Adele's singing. I thought she's a very talented person. I love that Adele. Here's the thing, in the entertainment culture.
I'm sorry. Is that based on record sales, or is that based on money produced from sales?
In terms of sales.
In terms of sales.
It just all the article says in terms of sales.
Okay, so probably
says,
records
per
sold.
the Recording Industry Association of America, best-selling albums in all time.
So album sales then. Okay.
Well, one of the best in the U.S. even still, right? So, and I've always known that she was like super talented. I've always enjoyed her music.
Everybody can listen to some Adele.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I've also always enjoyed the fact that Adele is one of those people who, she's a singer who can literally sell out a stadium for her to just stand in the middle and sing for an hour and a half. You know, like in the world of pop music, the productions are outrageous.
The choreography, the lights, the show,
things that
everything.
they're doing are just huge. And for women in the industry, I feel like I know that like a lot of them don't have a problem with it, but I do feel like it's kind of a I don't know, a sad thing where like a lot of times like it's like there's like a certain level of success that it's like you're not expected to really be able to attain unless you're willing to
sell your body as
part
of the package.
Yes, exactly. And I know like a lot of them don't mind, they don't care, but like at the same time like it's kind of a sad commentary on society, not
right.
But Adele, it's like no, like she can literally like she just stand in the middle of the stage and just sing for an hour and a half and people will sell out. And which is amazing, but I still didn't think like she would be right there with the Beatles yet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, I don't know. So I just thought that was really fascinating.
That's crazy. I mean, I guess that speaks to the fact that when you're able to grab both a male demographic and a female demographic, like you can do a lot of things. And like, the Beatles were able to do that. And a lot of big bands were able to do that and be, across other demographics, be able to pull people in as fans like that. That's pretty incredible that she's number 4. That's just nuts.
And that's specifically in the UK on the number 4. I don't know where she ranks in the United States, but I'm still, because the UK, I mean, like, they're even more obsessed with the Beatles than
I know. Like her and Beyonce were like going toe to toe sales wise for a long time.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, that's actually related to our next little fun fact, which is that she and Beyonce are the only 2 female artists who in one night won 6 Grammys. They hold the record. They tie with the record. 6. Wait, is that right? I think it's 6. Hold on, let me double check.
So disappointing to
Yeah,
everyone
6.
else that goes to
Yeah.
the Grammys hoping to
Oh,
win.
I know, right? Seriously, can I get any category, please? Just something.
Right.
No, but I was just
Beat down.
Yeah, I'm like, I you'd think that like that would be more well known, but anyways, 6 Grammys. Like, what do you do? What do you think you do? Like, for me, if I'm gonna go into like the music world and to be a performer, right? To really be, and somebody says, all right, here's 6 Grammys, I'm gonna be like, all right, well, I guess I'll be done then. Like,
Right.
it's like you gotta be like, I guess not really. I guess truly successful people like Tom Brady for football, like, he's got the most Super Bowl rings of all, and yet here he is. He's he might be coming up. This is before the Super Bowl, in case anyone's watching this. He's in the Buccaneers now, and like,
Right.
He's on his way to maybe potentially winning yet another Super Bowl. And you're just like, man, I guess like that kind of like successful person, like they're like, I got one more in me,
Highly productive.
So
people,
yeah,
too.
exactly. Oh, dude. I mean, I don't know any like the pop industry world people I know are like a lot of times like they got crazy productive schedules, but dude, Tom Brady is like, I know this is like way into a different world, but I'm just saying I ran across a thing about his schedule one time, and I was like, wow, like no wonder he's amazing. The dude eats like a gerbil. I mean, he eats like, I don't mean like little. I mean like he eats so healthy. It's like he's like a rabbit, and he wakes up like crazy early, goes to bed. I mean, he's just got like such good discipline, which is a word that eludes most musicians. I think in the world of entertainment, for actors, for
I don't think it eludes the people who are making those huge records.
Sure. No, but I think overall, in like a lot of people who want to do the entertainment things,
mere humans.
They really struggle with this sense of like, it's like you have to like, no one just. Hollywood has kind of sold the legend of getting discovered, right? I'm like, that was really never true. Like, it's never really been true. Like all these great, like Ray Charles, like, he went to a performance school. Like they all did things where they really
did a lot for themselves before somebody else.
Yeah, they developed themselves at their craft, and they worked hard, and they were constantly doing things. And I think there was just always this kind of myth about like getting discovered and or making your big break, and it's like I just don't think that's really ever really been the way things worked. I think some people that has been true, but for the vast majority of success in the entertainment world, they've had the same mindset as somebody like a Tom Brady or and I think musicians and entertainment actors, things like that, I think there is a little bit of a, because of the type of person that wants to do these things, it's like, because I'll admit it, even on myself, like I can be a very lazy person if I wanted to be. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I mean, I'm not against a good Saturday where I literally do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, like as you're living an existential kind of 9-to-5 life, like I kind of do nowadays as a construction superintendent. It's like Saturday and Sunday. It's like, I don't really want to do much but stay at home.
Yeah.
And even when I'm at home, I don't really want to do, clean anything, and that's really lame. Obviously I do anyway, but it's like, the motivation is just, it's insane to be one of those kind of people that's so motivated. Musicians are not that.
I was gonna say, I think sports people are kind of that way. Like any gymnast, like that you go, like you talk to a family who's got a gymnast, a young girl or a young boy who's like doing that route, like they're constantly, constantly at that gymnast place. It's like you have to like devote a family to it. Like if you have one person doing gymnastics, the whole family is like a gymnastics family.
Yep.
Whereas like if you have someone taking guitar lessons or voice lessons in your family, it's like, that's that thing that they do. And it's kind of funny because even the parents have a different expectation where like parents will kind of be like, I've had some parents who have a very like we're doing this music thing, and you're gonna be committed. You're gonna practice your butt off and really like
the very iron-fisted kind of
very few parents,
stereotypically Asian thing to do
whatever,
right? That's really bad. I'm sorry,
no.
it's like what people
Tiger Mom, right?
Yeah.
But so there's that. But then like on the music side, like parents don't really like most of my parents are not, like that, and most students are not like that. They just kind of like, so I don't know.
Take it kind of slowly.
Yeah, and it's
as
funny
it
because
comes.
the odds are like the odds of you being a super famous gymnast where you make your living doing gymnastics. They're not that different than making a living doing music. I actually kind of feel like you actually kind of have a better chance of making a living doing in the music industry
For sure.
than you do in the gymnastics industry. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I
not
feel
at
like
all.
there's more opportunity, and yet people actually don't view it that way.
Yeah.
Why is that? What's
Okay, so like there was a book that I read years ago called Talent is Overrated.
Oh, 100. Oh,
Are you familiar with that book?
No, but I already agree with that statement. I say that all the time.
Basically, he throughout the whole book gave all of these study examples on people that were super high performers, no matter what their field was, and it simply looked at their lifestyle leading up to that point.
Yeah.
And it juxtaposed those people against people in the same field. That were doing things not on the same level,
Right.
and simply where they ended.
Right.
And it took things like violinists in Berlin. Okay, so like super high level of training that goes on in the Berlin schools, and those students who are the most disciplined and the most tenacious about self-improvement. Those kids who put in thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours early on, it's like a bank account. It's like you get that many hours invested, and then by the time you reach the point where everyone else is kind of starting,
Right.
even though you may be considered on equal levels, simply by the fact that you've been working, maybe not more productively, but you've just been working longer. Right? It means that you're so far ahead on that curve. You've put yourself, no one else has put you, but you put yourself so far ahead on that curve that you're going to be the one that's going to become a concert violinist.
Right.
And they're going to be the ones that become Berlin violin teachers.
Yeah. Well, this so we have such good symmetry. This goes all the way back to what I was saying earlier about voice people being the lazy ones, right? Like, because the people who have the talent, right? Like, they take it for granted,
Right.
So they're not doing the work that you're talking about. So like, not to go back here again, Tom Brady is kind of a good example where he was a sixth round draft pick. Like, he was not. I don't know. Like, he was like 190 or something like that. He was picked like way late in the draft.
Yeah.
And yet, here he is. And I know some football person's going to be like, say some trash about Tom Brady, and I'm not here to argue any of that kind of stuff. All right, but like, I feel like he switched teams, and is still being super successful. So I feel like that argues for his favor pretty strongly. But like, that's the thing, like what you're talking about, like it's that, like, just that, doing stuff, just do stuff. I honestly, that's probably just like the best philosophy in life, period. Like, just do things.
Well, things change too, right? Like the world is constantly changing. So just doing stuff could also dead end you. I feel like the thing to me that really sets you aside as a producer anyway, or somebody who's doing really well in whatever field you are, because like that book, I think Scott Joffin is his name, the author of the book. It's been years since I've read it, so I'm probably getting that wrong, but he examined music, he examined sports, he examined decision making in a big way by these people, and pointed at that as being really the key element of why these people are at that level and all the other people are at this level or that level or that level. And so one thing he pointed out, I'm drawing a blank here for a second on where I was going, but
about picking the wrong, that like just doing things, but if you do the wrong things, it'll dead end you.
Right. You get dead ended, I think, a lot of times, specifically because you do not tell yourself, I must constantly learn. Right. Because things are constantly changing. Things are constantly, the environment's changing. People and cultures are changing constantly. The requirements and regulations are changing. The availability of things is constantly changing. All those things change.
Right.
If you don't constantly learn to keep up with those things, or at least have the mentality that you should keep yourself constantly learning,
right,
then what happens is you reach a point where many people do, where you say, I would rather fail than have to learn, than have to go through the process of learning that. That's like when I look at, say, people over 60 that struggle with electronics. Like my boss doesn't struggle with electronics at all, right? But he's an extremely high performance guy.
Right.
And I see a lot of people in his same age bracket that are just like, I don't want to mess with this. You do it.
Right. Yeah, I see.
And I think that really is like that sets those people aside too. You know, there's a humility in saying I must constantly tell myself I don't know enough.
Right.
Which is really what I think it is to say I have to continue learning. I don't know enough. I got to keep going.
Yeah.
And a guy like Tom Brady, you know, like he's got to be thinking those things. He's got to be thinking these are all young bucks. These are all guys who could smoke me in so many ways.
Sure.
I have to keep learning how to beat them. I have to keep learning how is football working now, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny too, because all the entertainment industry has gone through so many shifts over the past 20 years, basically because of Napster, you know.
Right.
And it's funny because like it started with Napster and you think music, but actually I think because of Napster, like it's affecting into the other elements of the entertainment world too, where you see that like that ability to adapt, you know, like. How are some of these organizations have it and some of them don't, and nobody knows. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on where all this is going, but it's really fun to watch, and I love getting to be a part of it. It's kind of fun getting to be a part of it as a low level guy, because like I get to stand on the outside and see. Like I read this article, or maybe it was in a book somewhere that said something. Don't quote me on these exact numbers, but it was something to the effect of like in 2007 or 2005 or something around that area, the music industry was like a $7 billion industry, and only 10% of that went to independent artists, which is not, you know, like that's not tons, right? But the pool of independent artists was smaller, right? Now the music industry, because people talk about
it's gone down the drain or whatever.
No,
like,
well that's what they say.
Yeah,
but the truth is, it's actually like a $15 billion industry now. It's actually gone
more
way
than
up, and 30% of this. Again, some of these numbers are not exactly right. Then that's okay. But you know,
the
30% is going to independent artists. But you've also got infinitely more independent artists.
Yeah,
it's
hey,
like
that works.
It's like a birthday party going on. It's not a birthday party. But I find that really fascinating that you've got the
inverse kind of thing actually happening.
Yeah, and you've got all these people who are able to do things in a way, and I know this is like it's almost like it's almost talked about too much in like podcast world, but it's just fun to me to be the kind of the person on the outside looking in with the entertainment, the TV shows and movies where and then you had 2020 happen where you had this another huge shift. You had like and I've got friends who they make their living doing live music, and it's like 2020 happened. What are they going to do? I mean, they don't have careers in other fields, you know, they don't have like music is it, and it's like, and then what are they going to do? And so they like all this adapting had to happen like immediately. Like all these, you know, it's funny, like even things like these microphones, like this kind of stuff, like it's like you couldn't even find it because people were going and buying all this
scarce
stuff. And you know, like what are TV shows gonna look like? And you know, it's just kind of it's really intense because there's so much change happening, and I feel like it's good. I feel like the opportunity for the change that kind of needs to happen, you know, like is there,
Yeah.
and people want it. I mean, people
For
like there are
sure.
certain things that people, people want some different things out of the entertainment culture, and the opportunity for them to receive that now is wide open because the avenues are so much more.
Yeah, the access to the
yeah.
tools and technology.
Yeah, what
and
are they? The
skills
threshold, the entrance, the threshold entrance, whatever you call that. It's just like so low now.
So low.
You can have something as simple as what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
this would have been incredible 20 years ago.
Right.
25
Exactly.
years
Yeah.
ago. This
People
would have been a really
innovative.
thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So I think it's cool. I think it's a great place for kind of people who are creatives. It's a great place for all of us to get to be in. And I know it's like everyone talks about how the market is so. Everyone's like, oh, the market's so overflooded with all these different things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's the thing. There are over 7 billion people on this planet.
Yeah.
I'm like, and we have access to each other now like we've never had before. I'm like the market might be overflooded. We're not even scratching the surface, And also I found out something interesting about podcasts. This is actually not why I wanted to do this, but I did learn about it when I was looking all this stuff up. So there's like infinity YouTube channels. I mean, there's just like an unbelievable amount of YouTube channels. But like active podcasts, there's like less than 1 million. Did you know that?
Wow, worldwide?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, I mean, on like the common, Apple,
Okay.
Spotify, those kinds of the common places. I mean, there might be some that you don't.
The more black web podcasts.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know. Well, not black web, just
Dark
maybe
web
like
or
obscure,
whatever.
like I don't know, things that I don't know about. I mean, I'm like not an expert in the area or anything, but I just thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow,
that
that
seems like a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think
fascinating.
a lot of it. I think a lot of people are doing things like doing things like this, but just doing it on YouTube. It's like a podcast, but it's not on a podcast. Like it's more like a show.
Right. Like other than the Google homepage, like YouTube is the #1 search engine.
Yes, exactly.
So it's, people find stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
there, like all of the stuff we've talked about, kind of, I feel like has a common thread or a narrative of what it says. And maybe I can try to do a good job of tying all this together in how I see it. But it's that, okay, so we have like music as a culture, let's say. And then we have let's say there's two sides of that. You have the producing side of it, and you have the hopeful listeners who enjoy the music. Some of them want to get into the producing side of it, want to become musicians, want to become artists, and all that kind of stuff. And there's these ways of thinking that exist in both of those worlds, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody over here in the producing side of things, they're like, if you were to ask them, many of them tell you the same things. Like, you just got to start. You just got to start making it. You got to be disciplined. You got to practice. You got to just go. And all the people over here are kind of saying, it's obvious that, like, to be a musician, like, you got to be discovered. You got to be signed. You have to, all the negotiating that goes on with that. You have to have really good promoters. It's really difficult to make money because the contracts that these companies want you to sign basically take all that away from you.
Right.
And if you don't sell out shows constantly, you end up owing, the production companies a lot of times money.
Labels,
because it's really a loan, if you will.
And advances, definitely.
So that's the way it's thought about.
Right.
But like, I'm fascinated with economics right now, and so it's similar to every other kind of business in basics, and that is that you have a production, and you have these genres that you can produce in,
right?
Okay, and those have audiences,
right?
And the key is not to try to do, if you're a aspiring musician or you're an aspiring anything, the key is not to try to do what these people look like they're doing. And I say look like they're doing because if you ask them, how do I get to where you are, they will tell you something.
Sure.
And that something they tell you will not tell you to just do what it looks like I'm doing.
Sure.
They'll say, just do that special thing that you know how to do, that you like, and just do a ton of it and keep growing, keep getting better and better. And there's this. Let me just finish real quick.
No,
there's this. There's this philosophy in business that has to do with the difference between big and small, right? You have, let's say, a company like Unilever, okay, or Unilever, depending on how you say that word. If you're from the UK or from the US, or from different parts of the US. Okay, that company is huge, like international company, tons of products, which their logo kind of shows, because it has like millions of products that make a big U. Anyway, Unilever is huge. Like many huge companies, they cannot innovate. It's not what they do. It's not what they do well. Yeah. What they do is sell. What they do is network. Yeah. And what they do really well now that they're so big is buy small companies that can innovate and find those small niche little markets and dominate those small niche little markets. This gets back to my beekeeping video, which led into the other stuff. It's like, for some reason, I hit a chord in this really small niche little area, or it looked to me. I was blown away by, 1,000 views whenever it first happened. I was like, what the heck, But I hit a chord with a very small niche market. And the point is that if you're small, you can move fast, you can innovate, you can change. And that's the way, like, people like the Beatles back in the day, that's the way they worked. Like, they just created something new and they went with it. And because they could move quickly, they could adapt quickly, they could make it how they wanted. Right. As soon as they started becoming a really financially viable company, if you will, then they become extremely valuable to these people over here.
Well, and I'll say it, like, the way that what you're saying makes sense and ties in. So, like, a lot of, and I'll say a weakness for myself as a musician and a music creator is that I oftentimes find myself struggling with what are people wanting to hear, right? And the thing is that, people who really innovate in other areas of life, they're not really asking that question. So, like, I've heard that this is attributed to Ford. I don't know if Gerald Ford actually said this, but something along the lines of, if I was looking to give the people what they wanted, I would have given them a better horse and buggy. Right. In other words, he was giving them something that they didn't know that they want. Right. He had to create something that nobody was actually, like, the idea of supply and demand. It's really not that. It doesn't really work that way. It's not. You're not. I mean, some areas of business, I guess it does, but in innovating, it doesn't.
At a point in business, it works that way.
Sure, but for when you're doing something, innovative, it's you're actually doing something that nobody's demanding, right? And so the Apple iPhone, like, people weren't saying, "My gosh,
they needed it.
If only I had a touchscreen phone." People weren't saying that, right? It just came around, through their iPod stuff and everything, and it just ended up being amazing. And then, but so bringing that to, like, the entertainment world, it's kind of funny because it's that way with music. Trends, so you have, like, somebody back in the day, like, Creed and Nickelback, who everyone hates on nowadays, but they all secretly loved 20 years ago. Right. And I don't actually, I think, I'm like, they did exactly what I wanted them to do.
I mean, their success is indisputable.
So I'm like, I thought that was just perfectly fine music, and I loved it. I jammed out to it, right? And
you don't harbor hate against
I know.
Nickelback?
Dude,
come on, man.
Isn't it weird how, I don't know what people's deal is with that, and it's, like, trendy, but so it's funny is, like, they did something that was, like, it just hit different. It wasn't something that people were looking for, and and then, like, a million other bands did the exact same thing, right? And it's funny because, like, Billie Eilish, so bringing it more modern times, like, nobody was looking for that sound, like, nobody was looking for what Billie Eilish is producing, right? And yet people are there. It's like they're super excited about it and they love it. And no matter what your views are on whether you think it's good music or not, like, it's you got to see that, like, they clearly did something that people were not asking for, right? And yet when people heard it, they were like, "This is exactly, you knew what I wanted before I did." And now you've got a lot of people who are coming up and they're like, I want that Billie Eilish kind of sound. And I know this because I've had students that say the exact same thing, like, oh, I want to do this, but kind of like a Billie Eilish flair. And and it's funny because, like, you know, if you would have said, like, I've listened to I sat down and listened to 2 of her albums just so I could like
Straight
really
through,
just so I could really see what it is all about. And I was like, okay, so like some of it I thought was fine, some of it's not my favorite. I'm not like, oh, it's terrible music. I think it's fine. You know, I'm not like a crazy fanatic about it. I just think it's some of it I will say is actually pretty good, right? So there's some songs where I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But like, if you would have said, you know, 10 years ago, hey, I want you to like layer your voice, whispering your words in like 20 different melodies or 20 different harmonies, people would have been like, what? You know, like,
that's gimmicky. Why?
Yeah, like that seems so weird. Like that would make the song sound creepy. And it's like, people want creepy. Yeah, you know, like
that's what people are into now.
Yeah, you know,
right?
and
how do you sell that?
Yeah,
you know, from that kind of
so there's just that sense of like, and I struggle with that as a creator, whereas like I'm not totally free in my creative process to just not care.
Right.
You know, I care a little too much. You know, but I just think that's so fascinating how it is like it does all kind of tie in. Like, you know, you're kind of interested in economics and things, and the music world is kind of doing the same thing in the, you know, TV shows and all that kind of stuff. They're all kind of like, they have their phases of you got to give people what they don't know that they want. You know, and that's also hard, because then you'll go to some musicians and they're like, yeah, nobody's doing this, and it's like, yeah, there's a reason it's terrible. You know, I mean, you know, like how do you know when you're the one, like, I'm doing something that nobody's looking for, and it's like, it's because it's awful, as opposed to I'm doing something nobody's looking for and it's amazing. Like that's, you know,
man, there's probably so many answers to that. We could probably spend hours and hours talking about all of that.
Yeah, I think the people who don't care are probably the ones that do the best. You know, or like Korn, that rock, you know, the rock band. Yeah, you know, they just like, when you look at the history of that band, like, dude, they just did not care. I mean, they were weird, and they were like glad to be weird, and they just didn't care. And people, I think, resonated with that. You know, people were like, you know, I'm a little weird. I'm on board with that. You know,
right?
And then. You know, and then, like, because I know, like, when they presented their music to a lot of people, like, all the labels were like, no. And but then they were like looking at their shows, and they were like, well, we'll make money, so yeah, sure, I guess, you know.
So I mean, that's the way business goes. No, it's interesting. I mean, it's like, okay, let's take 2020, like Blinding Lights or whatever, right? Super well produced song, doing really, really well. You know, it was the number one or whatever, I think, for it might be the number one for the whole year.
From the Weeknd?
Yeah, Weekends.
I'm blinded by light.
Yeah, right. And
I think WAP was actually number one song of the year.
Was it?
Yes.
But it was doing. I know it was like it was in the top. Well, it was in. I know it was in the top 5 for like weeks and weeks.
Oh yeah, Blinding Light.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, it's still. I actually checked Spotify top 10 today. It's still up on the top 10.
Is it? Yeah. So it's.
And I like that song a lot.
It's a great song, but I think
not WAP. Blinding Lights.
Right. Well, come on, Nick. No. So a song like that, for instance, I think is a good example of how maybe the situation for music is a little different than it was for the Beatles. Or a lot of those, like rock and roll whenever it first came out, and then when you have alternative rock, when you have all these different varieties of rock, it's really hard to keep just slightly changing something and then calling it new.
Yes, right.
You know, it's really, really hard to just slightly change something enough. Like these big changes that occurred early on in American history and just world history, if you will, for pop music.
Yeah.
It's like
huge shifts.
We haven't really had huge shifts like that in the last
other
few
than
years.
the fact that rock just went on vacation.
Yeah.
Like rock and roll.
Country music went like that. in America, and rock is like,
dude, rock and
Yeah.
roll was just like, I think people.
that's why
it's-
people hate,
but
on
what's
the
funny is,
Nickelback.
but what's funny is, I still know so many people who love to listen to rock.
Yeah.
It's just like, for whatever reason, like labels are. I don't know if it's like a pay structure thing where they're
Yeah.
like, it's just easier to.
I've been jamming out to the, to like 106 The Eagle or whatever. Like this last week, it's like when I'm driving or whatever, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that rock is just so good.
It is.
sometimes.
I know. I still jam to a lot of my old
Yeah.
stuff.
What I was gonna say is like, that song reaches, Blinding Lights reaches back to kind of like the sound of the 80s.
Yes. Oh, totally.
And
oh,
so-
that was 80s made a big comeback over the past decade for
And
sure.
I think that's gonna keep happening as the new best-selling sounds, for
Right.
a long time until somebody small is brave enough to really say, okay, this sound of music that I'm gonna actually really, really, really work to be musician-ish or musicianly about,
Right.
like the Beatles were great musicians. Like you listen to their stuff and you take apart like how the structurals all work, it really makes a musician feel good to like
Sure.
to do that. It's not just bland writing and bland musicianship or whatever,
Right.
But it strikes a really cool chord.
Well, man, I think we're gonna wrap it up,
Sure.
and this was really cool.
Yeah, it was fun to go to the
both
music
my
with you.
both of my videos are dead here.
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know what we're gonna do with camera stuff, but we'll figure it out. And if anybody watches or listens to this thing all the way through, you're a trooper, and good for
Yeah,
you. Thanks
good
for.
on you.
Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I definitely enjoyed it. So I think this is gonna be a thing, man. I'm gonna do this. This is fun.
Absolutely. You asked me earlier, like, what should we call this? Like, what you're still looking for
Right,
a
yeah,
name and all
yeah.
that. I do think maybe, like, because it came up while we were talking, was like, that idea of going to the music is kind of a cool,
Oh yeah.
cool theme, if you will, for like kind of what went on here. Is like,
Sure.
We're like kind of taking ourselves into experiencing these things and talking about them, and I think that's maybe something along that line. Maybe you could think
Like
about.
to the music.
Yeah, or like go to the music with
Yeah.
Dustin McCullough.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Go to the music.
Go somewhere with maybe just something to think
Yeah.
about, get inspiration from.
Yeah.
That one's for free.
You know, it's funny that you say that. Actually, my very first YouTube channel, you know what it was called?
No.
It was called the Go-To Goatee.
The go-to goatee.
Because I had a goatee.
Yeah.
and I literally was like, the Go-To Goatee. Like, we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Well, whoever listens to this or watches the videos, y'all chime in on help Dustin out here, guys.
Yeah, exactly. It'll already be titled, but I'm not against retitling something. So
Thank you so much for having me, man.
absolutely.